changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. It's Friend Friday, and that means that I get to introduce you to someone in the Chicken Soup for the Soul family who I want you to meet. And that person is Claire Cook, who was my co-author on a book that we did that was a lot of fun called Chicken Soup for the Soul, Reboot Your Life. Claire is the woman who wrote Must Love Dogs, and I'm sure you've seen that movie. She wrote her first novel in her minivan outside her daughter's swim practice when she was 45 years old, and she had such success that at age 50, she was walking the red carpet at the Hollywood premiere of Must Love Dogs, which starred Diane Lane and John Cusack. Before being such a fabulous novelist, Claire was a teacher. She worked with children from preschool to middle school. She not only reinvented her life, going from being a teacher to being a successful writer, but she also moved from Massachusetts to Atlanta to be closer to her two adult children. And so I thought that was very impressive as well. She changed careers and she moved from Massachusetts to Georgia. And Claire is a USA Today bestselling author of about a dozen different novels. And she put out last year or the year before a wonderful nonfiction book called Never Too Late, Your Roadmap to Reinvention Without Getting Lost Along the Way. But of course, her proudest achievement, in my opinion, is co-authoring Chicken Soup for the Soul, Reboot Your Life with me. So Claire,
of course it is.
Welcome to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast.
Thank you for having me, Amy. It's so nice to hear your voice, and I'm honored to be on Friend Friday.
Well, I'm glad to have you. And I love the book that we made together, Reboot Your Life, because just as you reinvented your career at age 50, I did the same thing, because at age 50, when I was sending the last child off to college, I switched from being a business executive, a hedge fund manager, and a Wall Street analyst to something that was a lot softer and nicer, which was becoming the publisher and editor-in-chief of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And that allowed me to meet people like you. So we have both really had interesting journeys in our lives, and that's why it was so great.
And that makes me laugh when you say that, as if this is kinder and gentler, which is when I know how hard you work.
Oh, well, that's why I called you today, because I wanted you to tell everybody who's listening that I'm amazing. That was my primary objective. That's what this podcast is all about. I'm really only...
Call me anytime, Amy. No, I'm always happy to say that.
I'm going to rename it. It's not going to be Friend Friday anymore. It's going to be Flattering Friday.
It's the truth, though. I mean, I'm so amazed, and that's what I love about women at midlife. I mean, I just think we have so much ahead of us. There's so much to do. Everyone's stories are fascinating, and whether it's a big reinvention like you made or just something to bring, a tweak to your life just to make it feel a little better every day when you get up. I just think it's such an amazing time. And my latest reinvention, by the way, is I hit the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh, congratulations. That's great. Now, what is the name of your absolute most recent book?
Oh, my most recent book is called Shine On: How to Grow Awesome Instead of Old. It really came from not only the book I did with you, but also from Never Too Late, that I started getting all these emails from women saying, do you think I'm too old to try this or to try that? And I was like, of course you're not. Of course you're not too old. But I realized that I wanted to write about reinvention, but specifically from the angle of age. And I'm so glad I did it. It was just a really good book, and it kind of took me out of my comfort zone a little. I tried a lot of things. I've been so tunneled in on writing since my first book came out in 2000 that, and I'm working on my 16th book right now, which is amazing. But I really hadn't taken the time to think about what else do I want to do. As much as I've enjoyed the journey of each book, what about trying something that I just haven't, I took a painting class. I went to a drummer's circle. I just tried all these kind of out-of-the-box things, and that was really fun, too. So, yes, thank you. That's my latest book.
I so agree with you, because it's not just changing careers or perhaps changing where you live. It is learning to say yes to things, to new things, because otherwise you just get so stuck in a rut. And my husband and I are so aware of that. once we hit 50, we just said we have to keep doing new things. We can't be afraid. And so I remember going to Bermuda and riding a moped, and I was terrible at it. And I don't know, I almost killed myself on that thing.
Isn't it good to do something that you're terrible at? I mean,
yeah.
I know this about you because you're an overachiever and you're so good at what you do. It had been a long time since I had really just said, oh, this is going to be so embarrassing, but I'm going to do it anyway, and it's going to be really fun. And I think it's great to do that. It's like, so what if you're not good at it?
I loved when we did the Reboot Your Life book, I started seeing all these words like reboot, reinvent, revitalize, revise. Everything was this, that. And it makes so much sense because we're only halfway through our lives when we hit 50.
Exactly. And this whole ageist thing, it's just, I know we're in a youth-obsessed culture, but when you get to the point where you say, so what? And the other thing is we're kind of getting to be the majority. I mean, there are so many. Everywhere I go, there are all these fascinating midlife women, and certainly men, too. But, I think we can start to feel invisible, and if you look around, we're not at all.
That's true. It's funny. I was in this writers group a few years ago, and I was having hot flashes because it was that time of my life. And
right.
Here's the funny thing. I was complaining to the women one day that I was having hot flashes, and they said, oh, you're so young.
Isn't that great? Isn't that
because
perfect?
Having hot flashes sounded so youthful to them. So, yeah, we really are only in the middle.
And there's so many, when you meet some of those vibrant, women who are in their 80s and they're doing these fabulous things. I teach reinvention workshops, and there was a woman in one that I taught recently at Emory University, and she was in her late 80s. She was a clinical psychologist who was thinking about maybe cutting back on her caseload and wondering, what new things she could try. And so the whole group got together, and we decided to connect her with this charity where she would just be such an asset. And it was just the most wonderful thing. And I thought, this woman is almost 90, and she's not the least bit old. She was so, awesome. She was great.
Yeah, I come from a family of long-lived women. I remember my grandmother, when she was 90, she was still meeting with her friends who all survived also. And they, instead of playing mahjong, which was what they were supposed to be doing, they had a stock market club. And they would get,
oh, that's so cool.
They would get together for lunch once a month, and they would discuss their stocks. And they had they had a little investment fund that they ran together, these 90-year-old women. So that's the background I come from. So I'm hoping to be dynamic right up till age 100.
Oh, you absolutely will. I have no doubt. I mean, I would put money on that. You will. And I think that it really is, if you have something to get up for every day that just you're excited about. So I'm sure those women in that group were, dying to see how much money they'd made while they were sleeping, So, I mean, I just think whatever it is, just having something new and learning new things and just, not being afraid or maybe, I guess we're all afraid sometimes, but when you're afraid, pushing yourself past it. You'll be afraid right before you parasail. I'm sure you will.
I'm not going to think about it. I'm just doing it. I'm jumping.
Exactly. It'll be over fast. Exactly. That's how you have to do everything. And I'm afraid all the time. I just take a deep breath and do it anyway. When I think of the learning curve of the last couple of years for me, it's just amazing. But I love the fact that I've learned so much. I love technology. I love, the excitement for me about a new book is that I get to either create this, world with new characters, or I get to, write nonfiction and interview interesting people, or collaborate on a project like I did with you. It's just all so interesting.
And being the technology people that we are, I will remind you how we met. We met on Twitter. Because
yes.
You retweeted an interview that I did on Forbes.com. It was about tips for inspirational writing. And for some reason, I saw your retweet and I thought, oh, she looks so friendly. I had no idea that you had written Must Love Dogs, but I got in touch with you. And then this wonderful partnership came from it where we made the Reboot Your Life book together. But,
Well, it was such a great conversation because as I remember it, you asked me to write a story for you, but we got to chatting, and by the end of the conversation, we were, co-writing it, which I thought, now that's how women work together. I just thought that was great. So.
I always go with my gut. I always do. And I've met so many great people through Twitter just because of gut feelings about somebody follows me, and then I look at them, I'm like, I think I should know that person. But I'm going to ask you something you might be tired of talking about, but I am fascinated by how you wrote your first novel in a minivan, and then I know the second novel was the one that was Must Love Dogs. But how did you come to be writing that first novel in your minivan?
Well, my trajectory was so different than yours. I knew I was a writer from the time I was a little girl. I was published at 6 in the Little People's page in the local paper. I had a column by the time I was 16. I went off and studied with famous teachers. So I was kind of following that path. And then I graduated from college and choked, just completely choked. I listened to all the negativity that's always out there, and how hard it is to break in. And I just panicked and I didn't do it. So I hid from this, not just for a year or two. I hid from the thing that I was born to do for decades. So I went off and did other things. I won awards kind of in all the wrong fields. I was just everywhere but where I should have been. So fast forward, and I'm sitting outside my daughter's swim practice at 5 a.m. before I went to work full-time as a teacher. And it just hit me with the, force of the midlife tidal wave that I might live my whole life and never, ever, ever even try. It wasn't like I was writing a little bit on the side. I was just pretending I wasn't a writer. So that's where when I went out to the minivan, because I just sat in my minivan from 5:30 to 6:45 in the morning before I went to school. I dropped my daughter at school and went to work, as a full-time teacher. And for one whole winter, and wrote a book. And it was the only window of time in my life that I had, because I was teaching at one school, consulting for 2 others. My daughter was swimming 6 days a week. My son was doing karate and soccer. The suburban mom drill, I was doing it. And that was the only time I had. So when I hear people say they don't have time to follow their dreams, if I had time, and it was such a small window, it's possible. And I don't think you can do a whole career like that, but I think you can do the thing that will move you forward. And for me, it was writing that book. And once I did it, it just put me on an entirely different path.
I think that what you do, though, is characteristic of successful people, which is that they don't waste those small blocks of time, because 15 minutes here, 27 minutes there, an hour and 15 minutes in another place, those are usable blocks of time that you can use to change your life, as you did. Absolutely.
I so agree with that. And even now, so I guess it's almost 16 books since 2000. So that's pretty much a book a year, over average. Some it's been more, some it's been less. But I still, when I'm writing a book, I really, really believe what works for me is that I write 2 pages a day, 7 days a week. I can polish pages, but I just nudge it forward, instead of saying I need to wait till I can go away to a borrowed beach house and spend 24/7 writing a book. That doesn't work in my life. I have social media, I have interviews, I have, all this other stuff going on, as we all do. But the first thing I do every single morning is sit down and get those pages done. And that's what's made a difference for me.
Wow, you're making me think we should do another book together about being disciplined and using every precious moment. I think we probably will make another book one day, and our listeners will find out about it when it happens, but I'm sure it will. And I'm really glad you could join me today. My podcast has only been around for a couple of months. Our listenership is soaring.
Fabulous. I've been listening. They're great.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that you are part of the Chicken Soup for the Soul family and that you could come on my Friend Friday today. And for the people who are listening, I want you to know that if you want to read some more tips from the book that Claire and I made together, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Reboot Your Life, you can go to our website, chickensoup.com. And to close, I'll say I'm Amy Newmark. Thank you for listening to Claire and me today. And the next time we get together, I'm going to talk to you about something that I believe strongly in, which is why you should always listen to your gut feelings, because they can save your life.